The great ship's soul's light moved slowly toward the massive space station that floated in the darkness between stars. Admiral Park Dewan stood at the bridge window and watched the station grow larger. His heart beat fast with pride. Today was the day humanity would finally become full members of the Galactic Council. For 2,000 years, humans had spread across the stars. They had built colonies on 17 worlds. They had learned to travel faster than light. They had made contact with alien species and traded with them peacefully. Now, after centuries of waiting, the Council had finally invited them to join. Dr. Yoon Hana stood beside the Admiral. She was Earth's best diplomat, a woman who had spent her whole life studying alien cultures and languages. She held a datapad containing humanity's formal application for membership. Her hands were steady, but her eyes showed her excitement. "This is a great day for our people," she said quietly. Admiral Park nodded. "My grandfather dreamed of this moment. He died believing it would never come." "Captain Beak," Jisu's voice came through the speakers. "Admiral, the Council Station is hailing us. They are ready to receive our delegation." The Admiral straightened his uniform. "Tell them we are honored to accept their welcome." The Soul's light carried 300 of humanity's finest representatives. Scientists, artists, military leaders, and diplomats had all come to witness this historic moment. In orbit around Earth and the colony worlds, billions of humans watched the live broadcast. Children in schools stopped their lessons. Workers paused at their jobs. Everyone wanted to see humanity take its place among the stars. The Council Station was enormous. It was older than human civilization itself. 12 species had built it together over 50,000 years. Great towers of crystal and metal stretched in every direction. Ships from 100 worlds came and went through its ports. Admiral Park led his delegation through the grand entrance hall. Alien beings of every shape and size watched them pass. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in the air or moved on dozens of legs. The humans tried not to stare. But everything was so strange and wonderful. The council chamber was a vast circular room with 12 thrones arranged in a half circle. Each throne held a representative of one of the founding species. The Valori High Matron sat in the center. She was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that seemed to see through everything. The Kethmir Overmind sat to her left, its body made of thousands of tiny creatures moving as one. The Draloth Collective representative sat to her right, its form shifting and changing like smoke. "Humans of Earth," the High Matron said, her voice filling the chamber. "You have come seeking membership in our great council. We have watched your species grow. We have seen your achievements." Admiral Park stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "High Matron, we are grateful for this opportunity. Humanity wishes only to live in peace with all species and to contribute to the galactic community." The High Matron's silver eyes moved slowly across the human delegation. Something in her gaze made Admiral Park feel cold, though he did not know why. "Indeed," she said, "you have grown very quickly. In 2,000 years, you have achieved what takes most species 20,000. Your adaptability is remarkable." Dr. Yoon Hana presented the formal application. "We offer our science, our culture, our friendship. We ask nothing but equal partnership." The 12 council members looked at each other. Silent messages passed between them. The humans waited, hope filling their hearts. Then the High Matron smiled. It was not a warm smile. "We have made our decision," she said. "Humanity will not be joining the council." Confusion spread through the human delegation. Admiral Park frowned. "High Matron, I do not understand. We have met all the requirements. We have followed every protocol. The requirements have changed," the High Matron said coldly. "You see, Admiral, we did not invite you here to welcome you. We invited you here to end you." Before anyone could react, gas began pouring from vents in the walls. It was colorless, but had a strange sweet smell. The human delegates began to fall. Some tried to run, but the doors had sealed shut. Dr. Yoon Hana collapsed, her datapad falling from her fingers. Scientists and artists and diplomats dropped to the floor one by one. Admiral Park fought to stay conscious. His vision was blurring, but he could see the council members watching calmly as his people died around him. Why? He managed to ask. The High Matron stood from her throne and walked toward him. Because you are dangerous. You grow too fast. You adapt too well. You ask too many questions. In 1,000 years, you would challenge us. In 2,000, you would surpass us. We will not allow that. Through the chamber's great windows, Admiral Park could see flashes of light in space. His flagship was being destroyed. He knew, with horrible certainty, that the same thing was happening at every human colony. Earth, Mars. The 17 worlds humanity had made their home. All of them were being attacked at this very moment. 11 billion humans were dying. The Admiral fell to his knees. With his last strength, he activated his personal communicator. He did not know if anyone would hear his words, but he had to try. "This is Admiral Park Dewan," he said, his voice weak but clear. "The Council has betrayed us. They are killing our people. If anyone survives, remember this day." "Remember what they did?" He looked up at the High Matron, with hatred burning in his eyes. "And make them remember us." Then he fell forward and moved no more. The High Matron looked at the bodies scattered across her chamber floor. She felt no guilt. The humans had been a threat, and now that threat was ended. In time, the galaxy would forget they had ever existed. "Clean this up," she ordered her servants, "and send word to all systems. The human problem has been solved." She was wrong. Across the galaxy, nearly 2 million humans had escaped the slaughter. They fled into the darkness beyond the galactic rim, into regions no council ship would follow. They carried with them only their lives, their rage, and the Admiral's final words. The galaxy celebrated the end of humanity. They would have 4,000 years to enjoy that celebration. Then the silence would break. The ships fled through darkness that had no end. Behind them, the light of familiar stars grew smaller until it disappeared completely. Ahead was only the unknown void beyond the galaxy's edge, where no council species had ever traveled. Commander Otason was born on one of these ships. He never saw Earth, or smelled real air, or felt natural gravity. His entire world was metal walls and recycled water, and the constant hum of engines struggling to keep everyone alive. He was the first generation of humans born in exile, and he grew up knowing only one truth. The galaxy wanted his people dead. The survivors called themselves the Remnant. 2 million humans spread across 47 ships of different sizes. Some were military vessels that had escaped the initial attack. Others were cargo haulers or passenger transports that happened to be far from any council fleet when the killing began. They had no plan and no destination. They only knew they had to keep moving. Elderly Suni was one of the oldest survivors. She had been a young engineer on a mining ship when the betrayal happened. Now she was 90 years old, her hair white and her body bent, but her mind remained sharp. She gathered the ship captains together and spoke words that would shape humanity's future. "We cannot run forever," she said. "The void will kill us just as surely as the council would. We must find places to hide. Places they will never look. Places too dangerous for them, but not for us." Commander Tayson listened carefully. What places could be too dangerous for species that have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years? Elder Lee smiled grimly. The places they have avoided. Worlds with too much radiation, moons with volcanic surfaces, asteroids in unstable orbits. The council species are comfortable. They have forgotten how to survive hardship, but we have not. And so the remnants scattered to the most hostile environments they could find. They built hidden colonies on worlds that would kill most beings within hours. They learned to filter poison air and drink acid water. They found ways to harvest energy from volcanic vents and radiation storms. Each generation grew a little stronger, a little tougher, a little more adapted to conditions that should have been impossible. The children of the remnant were not like the humans who had died in the betrayal. Their bodies changed over centuries of living in extreme conditions. Their bones grew denser. Their immune systems became nearly unbreakable. They could survive temperatures and pressures that would crush their ancestors. Evolution moved faster when death was always close. But it was not only their bodies that changed. Their technology advanced in ways the Council could never imagine. Necessity drove invention. When you had no resources, you learned to create from nothing. When your enemies had better weapons, you invented weapons they had never seen. A brilliant scientist named Quan Murray developed the first ghost drive. It allowed ships to travel faster than light without leaving any energy signature. Council sensors could not detect them. They could appear anywhere and vanish like phantoms. Other inventors created ships grown from living metal that could repair damage on their own. Weapons that could bend gravity and tear holes in space. Armor that absorbed energy and made it stronger. 3,000 years after the betrayal, a woman named High Commander Shin Myong stood before the Council of Remnant. She was 40 years old, born on a moon so radioactive that her great-grandparents would have died in minutes there. Her skin had a faint metallic shine from the minerals her body had absorbed. Her eyes had adapted to see in darkness that would blind normal humans. Around her sat the leaders of every remnant colony. They numbered only 50 million now, spread across dozens of hidden worlds. It had taken 3,000 years, but they had finally stopped merely surviving. They were ready to do something more. "I have a question for this council," Shin Myong said. Her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "Why are we here?" The leaders looked at each other in confusion. Elder Hagungman, the oldest among them, spoke carefully. "We are here because our ancestors escaped the massacre. We survive because they survived." "That is how we came to be here," Shin Myong agreed. "But it does not answer my question. Why do we continue? What is our purpose?" Silence filled the chamber. For 3,000 years, the Remnant had focused only on staying alive. They had built colonies and raised children and developed technology. But they had never asked themselves what they were building toward. Shin Myong walked to a display screen and activated it. Images appeared showing the 17 worlds that had once been humanity's home. Earth, with its blue oceans. Mars, with its red deserts. Colony worlds of every kind, each one beautiful and unique. "These are the worlds they took from us," she said quietly. 11 billion people lived on them. Our ancestors. Our family. Our future. She changed the display to show a long list of names. It scrolled and scrolled, seemingly without end. Every child born in the Remnant learns these names. We memorize them. We carry them in our hearts. She turned to face the council. "We remember because we must never forget. But remembering is not enough." "What would you have us do?" asked Admiral Gong Yeonjin, commander of the military forces. "Attack the council? We have 50 million people. They have trillions. We have hundreds of ships. They have millions." "I do not want to conquer them," Shin Myong said. "I do not want their worlds, or their resources, or their power. I want something much simpler." She stepped forward, and her eyes burned with 4,000 years of waiting. "I want them to know. I want them to understand what they did. I want them to face us and see that we survived despite everything they threw at us. I want them to look into our eyes and know fear." She raised her fist. "I want justice, and I believe it is time to take it." The vote took only minutes. Every leader raised their hand in agreement. The decision was made with no argument, no debate. They had waited long enough. The Remnant began to prepare. Ships were gathered. Soldiers were trained. Plans were made with the patience of a people who had learned to think in centuries instead of years. The council had forgotten about humanity. They were about to remember. The Valerie outpost floated at the edge of known space. It was a small station with only 50 crew members built to watch the empty void beyond the galaxy. Nothing ever happened there. The officers considered assignment to this place a punishment for failure. Lieutenant Commander Velith was drinking bitter tea and staring at his sensor screens when the alert sounded. Something had appeared in front of the station. A ship. Small, dark, and completely unknown. "What is that?" he demanded. "Where did it come from?" His crew scrambled to their stations. They scanned the vessel again and again, but their instruments gave strange readings. The ship seemed to absorb their sensor beams instead of reflecting them. Then a transmission came through. A single human woman appeared on their screens. She wore a simple uniform, and her face showed no expression. Lieutenant No Yunji had waited her entire life for this moment. Behind her, dozens of crew members stood in perfect silence. "We remember," she said. Then her ship vanished. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone. No flash of light. No energy signature. It simply disappeared, as if it had never existed. Lieutenant Commander Velith stared at the empty space where the ship had been. His hands were shaking. He recognized the species on that transmission. Every Valori child learned about them in school. They were the dangerous ones. The aggressive ones. The ones who had been eliminated 4,000 years ago for the good of all. Humans. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Tell them. He never finished the sentence. 3 days later, the outpost stopped responding to all communications. When a patrol ship arrived to investigate, they found the station intact but completely empty. Every crew member had vanished without a trace. Only one thing remained, the words we remember written on every wall in every room across the galaxy. Similar events began to multiply. Human ships appeared without warning in the most secure locations. They delivered their message and then disappeared. Military bases went silent. Cargo convoys vanished. Supply lines that had operated for thousands of years suddenly stopped working. Grand. Admiral Cho Hyun-woo commanded the remnant's military forces from his flagship, the Unbroken Dawn. It was not the largest ship in the fleet, but it was the deadliest. Its hull was grown from living metal that could heal damage in minutes. Its weapons could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Its engines left no trace for enemies to follow. The admiral was 60 years old. His body hardened by a childhood on an asteroid where gravity was twice Earth normal. His soldiers called him the Ghost because he had a talent for appearing where his enemies least expected. Now he studied the reports coming in from across Council space and allowed himself a small smile. "They are afraid," he said to his officers. "They do not know how many we are or where we will strike next. Their fear is our greatest weapon." The Council finally understood the threat they faced. They called an emergency meeting for the first time in 800 years. Representatives of all 12 founding species gathered in the Great Chamber, where humanity's delegation had died so long ago. The Valori High Matron demanded immediate action. "Find them," she ordered. "Find them and destroy them completely this time. Leave nothing behind." The Kethmir Overmind processed billions of data points and reached a different conclusion. "Perhaps we should negotiate. They have demonstrated capabilities we do not understand. War may not be wise. Negotiate." The Draloth Collective representative shifted angrily. "With animals. With primitives, they are nothing. We ended them once, and we will end them again." Before the argument could continue, every screen in Council space activated simultaneously. The same image appeared on billions of displays across thousands of worlds. A human woman stood before them. Her face was old, marked by hard radiation and years of suffering. But her eyes were clear and bright and full of cold determination. Ambassador Kung Jiwan had rehearsed this moment in her mind for her entire life. Her grandmother had survived the betrayal as a child. Her mother had died in a mining accident on a frozen moon. Her father had worked himself to death building ships for this day. 3 generations of sacrifice had led to this single moment. 4,000 years ago, she said, her voice steady and calm, "You tried to murder our entire species. You poisoned our diplomats. You burned our worlds. You killed our children in their beds. You erased us from history and taught the galaxy to celebrate our death." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You failed. We survived. We grew strong in the darkness you drove us into. We became something you cannot imagine and cannot defeat." The High Matron's silver face twisted with anger. "You dare threaten the Council? We have 40 million ships. What do you have?" Ambassador Kang smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We have returned. Not for your worlds. Not for your resources. Not for power or revenge in the way you understand it. We have returned for justice. You will answer for what you did. Every species in this galaxy will learn the truth about their rulers." The transmission ended. The Council mobilized every ship they could gather. 40 million vessels from 12 species assembled into the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. They moved toward the edge of known space, where reports suggested the humans were gathering. They found the remnant fleet waiting for them at the Velka Nebula. 3,000 human ships hung in the darkness, their hulls absorbing light like holes cut in the fabric of space. 40 million against 3,000. The Council admirals laughed at such odds. Victory was certain. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Council fleet was scattered and broken. 30 million ships had been destroyed or disabled. The rest fled in every direction, their crews screaming about weapons that bent space and ships that healed faster than they could be damaged, and human soldiers who fought with the fury of beings who had nothing left to lose. Grand Admiral Cho Hunwoo looked at the wreckage of his enemies and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The war had barely begun. The galaxy had never known fear like this. For 50,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate power. Their word was law. Their fleets were invincible. No species had ever challenged them and survived. Now they watched in horror as everything they built crumbled before beings they had tried to erase from existence. General Huang Sujin led the ground forces with the same cold efficiency that marked all remnant operations. Her soldiers moved through Council space not as conquerors, but as liberators. They had a specific mission: find the hidden worlds, the secret shame the Council had buried for millennia. The first world they discovered was called Vethka in the Valori language. It did not appear on any official map. No travel routes led to it. As far as the galaxy knew, it did not exist. But remnant intelligence had uncovered references to it in captured databases. And General Wang wanted to know why. What she found made her weep. Vethka was a slave world. Millions of beings from 17 different species lived there in chains. They had been conquered by the Council thousands of years ago, and their existence had been erased from all records. They worked in mines and factories, producing resources for the Council while the galaxy celebrated peace and prosperity. The oldest slaves did not even know there was a universe beyond their prison. They had been born in captivity, as had their parents and grandparents going back countless generations. When human soldiers broke down the doors of their camps, they fell to their knees in terror. General Wang walked among them with tears running down her face. She spoke in a translation device that converted her words to their language. "You are free," she said. "No one will hurt you again. I promise you this, on the memory of 11 billion humans who died at the Council's hands." One old slave looked up at her with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. "Who are you?" "We are humans. The Council tried to kill us too. They failed." The old slave began to cry. "We thought we were alone. We thought no one knew. We thought no one cared." General Wang knelt beside him. "You were never alone. And now the whole galaxy will know what was done to you." Fleet Admiral Im Dong-wook had a different mission. His ships captured the Council's most secure facilities, not to destroy them, but to expose them. What he found was even worse than the slave worlds. In a hidden station orbiting a dead star, he discovered the Council's true arsenal. Genetic weapons designed to kill specific species while leaving others unharmed. Planet crackers capable of shattering worlds into asteroids. Biological agents that could wipe out entire civilizations in days. Most damning of all were the historical records. Humanity had not been the Council's first victim. They had not even been the 17th. Over 50,000 years, the Council had identified dozens of species they considered threats. Each one had been quietly eliminated. Some were killed by manufactured plagues. Others were destroyed by natural disasters that were anything but natural. A few were erased so completely that no record of them remained at all. Admiral and broadcast his records to every world in the galaxy. He showed the weapons. He showed the plans. He showed the calm bureaucratic documents where Council officials discussed genocide as, if they were ordering lunch, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had trusted the Council for millennia saw the truth about their rulers. Protests erupted on thousands of worlds. Governments that had supported the council suddenly found themselves facing angry citizens, demanding answers. The Valori homeworld was surrounded by remnant ships. No weapons were fired. None were needed. The population simply watched as human vessels hung in their sky. Waiting, the Kethmir Overmind tried to coordinate resistance, but humanity had learned to disrupt their neural networks. For the first time in 10,000 years, the individual Kethmir minds were separated from each other. They experienced loneliness and confusion and doubt. Many could not survive the shock. The Draloth collective fractured as different factions blamed each other for the disaster. Ancient lies and hidden crimes came to light. Civil wars erupted across their territories as they turned on each other, one by one. The council members were captured and brought to Earth. The human homeworld had been dead for 4,000 years. A burned and poisoned rock orbiting a familiar yellow star. But the remnant had been working in secret to restore it. The oceans were filling again. Green plants were spreading across continents. Animals were being reintroduced from genetic samples, preserved by the survivors, in the center of what had once been a great city. A tribunal was established. The 12 council leaders sat in chairs designed to hold them, facing a panel of human judges. Billions watched across the galaxy. Chief Justice Moonheron presided over the court. She was 70 years old, a scholar who had spent her life studying law and justice. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of 4,000 years of waiting. "You are charged with genocide," she said. "You are charged with conspiracy to commit genocide. You are charged with the enslavement of sentient beings. You are charged with the murder of 11 billion humans and countless beings from other species. How do you answer?" The Valori High Matron raised her silver head. Her eyes showed no remorse, only hatred and wounded pride. "We do not recognize this court. We do not accept your authority. You are primitives, animals. You have no right to judge us." "We do not claim that right," Justice Moon said evenly. "History judges you. Your own records judge you. The billions you enslaved and murdered judge you. We merely speak for them, then speak and be done with it," the High Matron spat. "Kill us. Take your revenge. Become the monsters you accuse us of being." Justice Moon was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was sad rather than angry. "You expect us to execute you? You want us to prove that we are no better than you were. That way, you can tell yourselves that your crimes were justified. That everyone would have done the same in your position." She stood slowly. "We will not give you that comfort. Death is not justice. Death is escape. You will live. All of you will live for as long as your species naturally endure. You will watch as your empires fall. You will see the beings you enslaved build new lives without you. You will witness the galaxy learn the complete truth about everything you did." She looked at each council member in turn. "And every morning when you wake, and every night before you sleep, you will remember. You will carry the weight of your crimes forever. That is humanity's judgment. That is our justice." The High Matron stared at her in shocked silence. This was worse than death. This was eternal witness to their own failure. "You cannot do this," she whispered. Justice Moon smiled grimly. "Watch us." 50 years had passed since the return. The galaxy was unrecognizable from what it had been under council rule. Old empires had fallen. New nations had risen. And at the center of it all, humanity had become something no one expected. President Seoga stood at the window of her office on New Sol, looking out at a city that would have amazed her ancestors. Towers of glass and living metal reached toward the sky. Gardens floated between buildings on platforms held up by gravity manipulation. Ships of every design came and went from spaceports that never closed. This was the capital of the United Human Territories. But it was also something more. It was proof that survival was possible after the worst imaginable tragedy. It was hope made solid. Today was the inauguration of the Stellar Accord, the new governing body that had replaced the Council. Unlike the old system, this one was built on equality and transparency. Every species had a voice. Every world had representation. Decisions were made through cooperation, not force. The Great Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from 64 species. Some were ancient races that had existed long before humanity left Earth. Others were newly discovered, civilizations only recently contacted. Many were species that had been enslaved or hidden by the Council. Now, free for the first time in their history, President SEO walked to the central platform and looked out at the gathering. She saw beings of every shape and size. Some breathed oxygen, others methane or chlorine. Some communicated through sound, others through light or electrical pulses. They were different in almost every way imaginable, but they shared one thing. They had all been affected by the Council's lies. "Friends," she began, speaking through translation devices that converted her words to every language present. "We gather today to begin something new. Not an empire, not a dominion, but a true partnership of equals." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 50 years ago, my people returned from exile. We had been gone for 4,000 years. We had survived in darkness and hardship that would have broken most species. We came back with weapons capable of destroying everything the Council had built.
Ow.
The hall was completely silent. Everyone remembered those days. The fear, the chaos, the uncertainty about what humanity would do with its power. "We had a choice," President CEO continued. "We could have taken revenge. We could have done to them what they did to us. Some of our people wanted exactly that. After 4,000 years of suffering, who could blame them?" She shook her head slowly. But we chose differently. We chose to be what they feared, but not in the way they expected. They feared us because we were adaptable, because we refused to accept limits, because we never gave up. They were right to fear those qualities. But those same qualities allowed us to imagine a better future instead of repeating the past. Admiral Ominje sat in the military section of the hall. He commanded the peacekeeping fleet that now protected all species equally. His ships still carried the terrifying weapons developed during the exile, but they wore new colors now. Instead of the pure black of vengeance, they bore the blue and white of unity. The admiral remembered his childhood, learning the names of the 11 billion dead. He remembered the anger that burned in his heart, the desire to make the Council pay for every life they had taken. But he also remembered his grandmother's words, "Anger is a fire. It can warm you or burn you. The choice is yours." He had chosen to let it warm him, to use it as fuel for building something better rather than destroying everything. "President," CEO gestured toward the former Council species in the hall. "The Valori sit among us today. The Kethmir, the Draloth. And yes, they committed terrible crimes. Their ancestors tried to erase my people from existence. They enslaved countless beings and destroyed civilizations. Some of the newer species shifted uncomfortably. They had not forgotten the Council's crimes. Forgiveness did not come easily. Their children did not commit those crimes," President SEO said firmly. "Their grandchildren did not commit them. We do not punish children for the sins of their parents. That is what the Council did. That is what we refuse to do." On the Valerie homeworld, the former High Matron watched the ceremony on a display screen. She was very old now, kept alive by the ironic mercy of human medicine. She had been forced to witness everything: the liberation of the slave worlds, the rebuilding of devastated civilizations, the creation of a new order that made everything she had believed in look monstrous. It was worse than death. Justice Moon had been right about that, but something else had happened that the High Matron had not expected. She had met the children of freed slaves. She had seen former enemies work together to build new worlds. She had watched species that should have hated each other learn to trust. She was beginning to wonder. She had been wrong about everything. On New Sol, a memorial stood in the heart of the capital. 17 pillars of black stone formed a circle around an eternal flame. Each pillar was covered with names, millions of them, representing every human who had died in the betrayal. Elder Choi Yuna visited the memorial every year on the anniversary. She was nearly 200 years old, one of the last humans born during the exile. Her body was sustained by technology her ancestors could never have imagined. but her memories stretched back to a time when humanity was a scattered, terrified remnant hiding in the darkness. Today, she was not alone. A young Valori had approached her shyly. The alien was barely an adult by their species standards, born long after the return. "I wanted to speak with you," the young Valori said nervously. "If that is acceptable." Elder Choi studied the young being with eyes that had seen more history than most species could imagine. "What is your name?" "Leth. I am a student at the Unity Academy." The Valori hesitated. "I have studied what my ancestors did to your people. I wanted to apologize. I know it changes nothing. But I needed you to know that I am sorry." Elder Choi was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, the eternal flame flickered and danced. Above her, ships from dozens of species crossed the sky together. "Young one," she said finally, "we did not return for apologies. We did not survive 4,000 years in darkness so that your generation could carry guilt for crimes they did not commit." "Then why?" Keleth asked. "Why did you return? Why did you not simply destroy us when you had the chance?" Elder Choi turned to look at the memorial pillars. "Do you see these names? 11 billion humans, farmers and scientists, artists and soldiers, children who never grew up, elders who never saw their grandchildren." She faced the young Valori again. "We returned so that their deaths would have meaning, so that what happened to us would never happen to anyone else. We survived so that we could build something better, not a human galaxy. Not revenge, just better." She reached out and placed a weathered hand on Keleth's shoulder. "The past cannot be changed. Your ancestors did terrible things. My ancestors suffered because of it. But the future." She smiled, and unlike the cold expressions of humanity's return, this one held genuine warmth. "The future belongs to all of us now. Humans and Valori and every other species. Together." Above them, the sun was setting over New Sol. The sky turned orange and purple and gold. Ships from 100 worlds caught the light as they passed, carrying beings of every kind toward new destinations. 4,000 years of silence had ended. Humanity returned not as conquerors or destroyers, but as something the Council had never imagined they could become, builders of a better galaxy. And in memorial halls across human space, the names of the 11 billion dead seemed to glow a little brighter, as if finally at peace, their children had made them proud.